believe that was accurate, so that's why I need to correct it.
Thank you. The Honourable Nicky Wagner.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I am enormously pleased that we've got to this stage in this bill before Christmas. It is really something to celebrate that we now have this enabling legislation almost in place, and that with the Christchurch City Council's commitment to their grant means that all the last bits of the plan are in place for this cathedral to be reinstated. And that's something that we can celebrate pre-Christmas. I'm particularly pleased because when I went to the Synod and talked to them about this, I promised that we would have action by Christmas. So I'm delighted that I can stand here and take some credit for getting some of that done, but also give credit to the Minister as well. This is such an important building to Christchurch. It's an important part of our history. It's an important part of our culture. As we've already talked about, every Christchurch person, Canterbury person, and most visitors that come to Christchurch have some kind of relation to this building. But it's also bigger than that. This is much more than just a building, much more than a church, much more than a cathedral. It is a significant heritage building that has been the symbol of our city for over 100 years. And the thing that strikes me about this building is, yes, the reinstatement is going to be a huge project, but when they decided to build this cathedral, there were only 5,000 people living in Christchurch, and yet they built a cathedral that seated 1,500. So it was an enormous undertaking for a very small population to create a neo-Gothic building of this kind of stature. So a reinstatement is a big challenge, and I know it's going to take up to 10 years, but in terms of the challenge of building it in the first place, I'm sure we'll be able to do it very successfully. Of course, the fact that the earthquakes damaged it so badly that it sat in the centre of our city, neglected and decaying for the last 7 years, has meant that even though there's been so much debate over the future of this building, even though lots of people had different ideas and not everybody supported a reinstatement, everybody has got to the stage that we need a decision, we need to go forward, and we now have a decision in place, and I'm very hopeful that the community will come behind this decision and take pleasure in the rebuild, the reinstatement, and pride as this building evolves once again. I just want to make a short statement of thanks to everybody who's been involved in this project. As we know, it's been 7 years. It started off by purely getting people out of it and looking after people who were injured and looking for dead bodies, which luckily weren't there. So it started 7 years ago, and from that time, the passion and the commitment of the people who cared about the cathedral and cared about the centre of the city has meant that there's been lots of debate. And I'd just like to pay my respects to the church properties trustees who are responsible for this building, who are the owners of the building, and Bishop Victoria Matthews, who is obviously the Bishop of the diocese. They have worked long and hard to try and get a good solution. I'd also like to pay respects to the heritage people, particularly the Great Christchurch Building Trust, and the leaders of that group, of course, is the Honourable Jim Anderton and the Honourable Philip Burden. They both led a very large team of people who were absolutely committed to getting the best possible outcome for Christchurch. And then, of course, I'd like to pay credit to the Honourable Jerry Brownlee, who took, when we were absolutely at a situation that we weren't sure the objective facts about this building, managed to have two reports. The first, the Miriam Dean report, which was an engineering report, which confirmed that the cathedral could be reinstated for about $100 million. And then, of course, the Cathedral Working Group, which has detailed the plan to go forward. And we appreciate that work because that's led to the government package, it's led to the funding options, and it's led to this legislation. So I think it's a very satisfactory way through this process. It has been blood, sweat and tears, but we are here, and now we can get together, get behind it, and make sure that this reinstatement goes as smoothly, as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So just in conclusion, I would like to celebrate with everyone here that we have got to this point in the project, that this legislation will empower and fast-track the reinstatement of the building, that the Christchurch City Council's grant is the last bit of monetary funding that we need for it to happen, and now I think we can just get on with it. This is a significant heritage building. It is the symbol of our city, and I hope every Christchurch person, Cantabrian and visitor to our city will be proud of the reinstatement. Thank you.
I call Dr. Deborah Russell.
Madam Speaker,